Chapter 1952. As the dust dispersed, everyone stared at that maidservant. Wasn't she the maidservant named Heiji who had always been by Yi Qingqian's side? Eldest young miss? Wasn't that Yi Qingqian? Wasn't it Yi Qingqian who threw Madame Mu into the ground with a whip? Why was it Yi Qingqian who fell into the deep pit? This turn of events left the commoners dumbfounded. Could it be that Shui Fei Shui had suddenly recovered her profound energy? Just as everyone was dumbstruck, a figure flew out from that huge deep pit. Carrying a terrifying profound energy, it broke through the clouds. A long blue dress drew a blue arc in midair. Like flowing water, it reflected the sunlight and emitted a clear and crystalline light. That person other than Yi Qingqian, who else could it be? The person who fell into the deep pit and smashed into the deep pit was really Yi Qingqian. Everyone stared at Yi Qingqian, who was standing steadily on the altar. Only to see Yi Qingqian in a sorry state. Her meticulously made-up hair had long been disheveled under that heavy impact, like weeds, messy beyond compare. That beautiful face was ashen. Vaguely, it could be seen that her ice-like skin had a few scratches. It was obvious that Yi Qingqian's injury was not light. What was going on? Mu Lai, who was at a close distance, couldn't help but widen his eyes as he stared at Yi Qingqian in shock. After some time he regained his senses and immediately climbed to the side of the deep pit which was smashed out. Sticking his head out to take a look, there was a huge deep pit deep into the ground. It was pitch black and he couldn't see the shadow of the underground. But Mu Lai could feel that there was no one there. Shui Fei Shui was not in the deep pit. Yi Qing Luo, you finally appeared. Yi Qingqian's angry voice suddenly rang. Everyone looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw Yi Qingqian with a twisted face, staring at a certain place behind the altar. Looking closely, it could be seen that Yi Qingqian's petite body was trembling constantly. Her slender fingers clenched into fists. Yi Qing Luo? Was Yi Qing Luo here? Everyone's heart trembled as they opened their eyes wide to look for traces of Yi Qing Luo. Big sister's quite sharp. You actually know that I'm here. A clear laughter rang out like pearls and jade falling from a plate. His laughter drifted with the wind. A slim figure appeared out of thin air. The young girl's flaming dress made her crystal-clear skin look even whiter and more tender, like an exquisite porcelain doll. Her eyebrows were like a painting and her eyebrows were thin and dark. Her beauty could topple cities. That otherworldly temperament, even though he was just silently hovering in the air. Everyone had the urge to kneel down and worship the goddess. What shocked everyone even more was, in the young girl's arms was a woman in disheveled clothes who was in an extremely sorry state. Wasn't that Shui Fei Shui? As it turned out, just as Yi Qingqian was about to throw Shui Fei Shui into the ground and forcefully smash Shui Fei Shui to death. Was it Yi Qing Luo who took action? Not only did she save Shui Fei Shui, and even blasted Yi Qingqian into the ground. Looking across the entire Shilon Square. Thousands of people, thousands of pairs of eyes. Not a single one of them noticed Yi Qing Luo's appearance. Yi Qing Luo. How powerful was she exactly? That was Yi Qing Luo, the young lady who shocked the 4 continents and was hailed as a legend by everyone. He actually really appeared. It was as if there was a huge drum beating in the hearts of the commoners. Yi Qing Luo slowly stood on the altar as she placed Shui Fei Shui down. Her hand was still supporting Shui Fei Shui as her lips curled slightly as she smiled sweetly. Madame Mu, are you feeling better? Chapter 1953. This matter started because of me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have suffered such humiliation. Yi Qing Luo supported Shui Fei Shui and sent her to Mu Lai's side. Leave the rest to me. Mu Lai's hands trembled as he hugged Shui Fei Shui. Both husband and wife's gazes fell onto Yi Qing Luo without blinking. The young lady's smile was bright and beautiful with a devilish charm and wanton. But when she said this sentence, the Mu couple obviously saw the chilling murderous intent in the young lady's pupils. No matter who it was, they would be stunned by that beautiful face. This was the lady who made their 2 sons infatuated. Their 2 sons' eyesight was indeed not bad. Miss Yi. Shui Fei Shui opened her mouth, her gaze was filled with worry. Before she finished her sentence, Yi Qing Luo had already looked at her. Her shimmering eyes flickered with a hint of gloomy luster. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. At an angle that Yi Qingqian couldn't see, she winked at Shui Fei Shui slyly. Immediately she said, Zifan and Zifei are fine, You don't have to worry. No. You should worry about yourselves. Yi Qingqian's sharp, hateful voice was heard from behind. A burst of cold, profound yin qi pressed towards them. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose slightly as her fingers flicked. The feather fan opened up on her fingertips and rolled up a hurricane. The two forces collided and the profound qi particles exploded in midair. Yi Qingluo leisurely turned around. Her expression was calm as she looked at Yi Qingqian teasingly. Tisk tisk, eldest sister is still as impatient as usual. No wonder you will always be my defeated opponent. Yi Qingqian was so angry that she gritted her teeth. The moment she saw Yi Qingluo, the anger in her heart surged uncontrollably. She couldn't wait to peel off Yi Qingluo's tendons and skin her. To destroy everything Yi Qingluo had. Let's see what Yi Qingluo had to be arrogant in front of her, flaunting her prowess. The more she thought, the more the resentment in Yi Qingqian's heart grew. Her sharp eyes turned cold as she attacked towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Then let everyone take a good look and see who is the loser. The long whip in Yi Qingqian's hand cracked loudly in the air. There was no hesitation in her attacks at all. As though he wanted to kill Yi Qingluo in one strike. Yi Qingluo sneered as she leapt forward. The glowing flame fan unfurled and launched an attack. As she intertwined with Yi Qingjian, she lured Yi Qingjian to the other side of the altar. Yi Qingqian was most familiar with her whip skills. Plus the power of the cursed magic tool. Yi Qingqian's attack was totally unstoppable. He could easily injure the others on the altar. When she saw the cursed magic tool, Old Song had given her some information about it in his mind. Cursed magic tools were extremely evil among darkness magic tools. His strength surpassed that of a divine artifact. He also has the evil power of darkness. Usually people who used cursed magic tools were either demons or on the verge of becoming demons. They were all bloodthirsty, murderous demons. Cursed magic tools were the most frightening. Even wounds inflicted by demonic artifacts would be corroded by demonic qi. It would be fine if he dealt with it in time. If it wasn't handled properly, the demonic artifact would corrode everything in the human body and eventually turn into white bones. Earlier, the dark illusion whip had whipped Mu Lai. From the wound on Mu Lai's face, Yi Qingluo had almost determined the degree of demonic qi brought by the dark illusion whip. She narrowed her eyes as the glowing flame fan in her hand waved continuously. Chapter 1954. The raging flame fan was like a flame, jumping around Yi Qingluo's fingertips. Vaguely, as Yi Qingluo's movements became bigger, the sparks turned into a huge fire dragon in a split second. Following that, the raging flame fan shot out numerous slender silver threads, entangling towards Yi Qingqian's direction. Yi Qingluo, do you think you can still trap me now? Yi Qingqian snorted coldly. The resentment in her eyes was extremely cold. The dark magic whip in her hand swam strangely, piercing through the air, looking sharper than a sharp blade. That whip lashed fiercely on the altar. It could pull out numerous long whip marks that were deeply embedded in the ground. Had to admit, Yi Qingqian's whip skills, coupled with the power of the cursed magic weapon. One after another, the long whip struck towards Yi Qingluo's face fiercely. The angle of the long whip was very tricky. Yi Qingqian obviously wanted to ruin Yi Qingluo's looks. And Yi Qingluo's figure was agile, her footwork almost made her come and go without a trace. Yi Qingqian could not even touch the corner of Yi Qingluo's clothes. On the contrary, Yi Qingqian herself, under Yi Qingluo's teasing time and time again, the hurricane and profound energy which Yi Qingluo unleashed broke that exquisite and gorgeous long dress which was like water ripples. Bright red blood oozed out from the wound. Yi Qingqian bared her teeth in anger. Her expression was sinister, staring fiercely at Yi Qingluo's direction. The long whip was going to take Yi Qingluo's life. However, the long whip's lightning-fast attack had yet to come close. Yi Qingluo disappeared again. Yi Qingluo, if you have the ability, don't try to escape like a turtle. Yi Qingqian gritted her teeth in anger. She felt like a pet being teased. Yi Qingluo snorted lightly, standing 3 steps away from Yi Qingqian, squinting at her. In that case, eldest sister wants to fight with me openly? Staring at Yi Qingluo's clear eyes, Yi Qingqian's heart was overwhelmed with a feeling of horror. Fight her fair and square? Yi Qingqian's sinister eyes turned cold as her murderous aura appeared. That's right. Hee hee. Then I shall fulfill sister's wish. Yiqing Luo chuckled lightly like a warm breeze, blowing against everyone's eardrums. The beautiful girl was as enchanting as a painting. In the next instant he disappeared into thin air. Yiqing Luo had unknowingly stood in front of Yiqing Qian. They were face to face, extremely close to one another. Yiqing Qian was so shocked that she took a step back and let out an scream. Before he could react, Yiqing Luo's lips were already curling into a smile. Her bottomless enchanting eyes seemed to be swirling with a whirlpool. Yiqing Qian was so shocked that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Her face was pale and she kept retreating. However, Yiqing Luo had already waved her fist and directly punched Yiqing Qian's face. Peng! A punch landed. It did not carry the slightest bit of profound energy. It was a solid punch. Yiqing Qian's nose spurted out a stream of blood. In an instant, it dyed Yiqing Qian's exquisite face. Boom! There was another loud noise. Yiqing Qian fell straight onto the altar. Her nose was bleeding, her robe was full of scratches and blood splattered everywhere. She was thrown onto the ground in a sorry state. The current Yiqing Qian was in a sorry state no matter how one looked at it. Where was the slightest bit of his previous elegance, arrogance and despotic demeanor from before? The surrounding commoners couldn't help but burst out laughing. They expressed that although they didn't have any good impression of Yiqing Luo, but seeing them torturing Yiqing Qian they felt great. Someone should take care of that vicious woman. Chapter 1955. Yiqing Luo walked slowly to the front of Yiqing Jian. She looked down at Yiqing Jian from above. Just like before, Yiqing Jian looked down at Mu Lai. That high and mighty, insufferably arrogant. As if she was looking at an ant. Yiqing Jian only felt a surge of blood in her chest. A mouthful of blood gushed out from her throat. She stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo, her eyes filled with hatred. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as her lips curled into a faint cold arc of ridicule, as though she was ridiculing her for overestimating herself. What a pity, elder sister, even if it's just an aboveboard I can still face you. Her light voice was mixed with endless mockery. Yiqing Jian's whole body tensed up, trembling violently. It was angry. Yiqing Jian was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She couldn't believe that Yiqing Luo was so powerful. She thought that with the wolf saint technique threatening the pharaoh, using the dark arts to give her a steady stream of profound yin qi so that she could continue to upgrade her profound grade. The current her strength could totally reach the level of a sky mystic supreme. Coupled with the dark magic whip that the wolf saint technique gave her. No matter what, to defeat Yiqing Luo it was totally effortless. But in fact, the one who fell to the ground was her sky mystic supreme. Looking at the entire Nirvana realm, the number of people who could reach the Sky Mystic Supreme could be counted with 2 hands. Of course, there were many experts who liked to live incognito. But no matter how many people there were who hid their identities, there was only one problem. Sky Mystic Supreme was rare in the world. Yiqing Jian would never believe it. Yiqing Luo, a waste for 15 years, could be more powerful than a Sky Mystic Supreme in such a short period of time. There must be someone secretly helping Yiqing Luo. It must be so. Yiqing Jian kept finding excuses to numb herself. Looking at Yiqing Luo's face filled with ridicule. She gritted her teeth and suddenly got up from the ground. The blue water pattern dress was like rolling waves. The ripples of the flowing water were so bright. Yiqing Luo had already guessed what Yiqing Jian wanted to do. At this time, even if she chased up, it would be too late. She simply stood on the spot looking at Yiqing Jian with a smile. It was as if he was watching a monkey show. After Yiqing Qian left Yiqing Luo's attack range, her figure stretched out as she headed straight towards the direction where the Mu family's old and young were tied up in a row. Her gloomy eyes were burning with rage. She quickly stretched out her hand and grabbed Old Master Mu. The long whip in her hand was placed across Old Master Mu's neck. Yiqing Luo, how dare you? Don't forget, the Mu family is in my hands. Father. Old man. Mu family's old and young cried out in shock as they looked at Yiqing Qian anxiously. These cries of surprise pleased Yiqing Jian. She hooked her arms around Old Master Mu's neck and unlocked the iron chain. Then step by step she walked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo, drink the supreme profound medicine soup. Yiqing Qian glanced sideways. Heiji understood and immediately took out a medicine bottle from her waist. That medicine bottle was thrown towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she quietly watched the medicine bottle drop beside her feet. The smile on her lips was tainted with a trace of cold ridicule. Yiqing Qian raged as she pressed the long whip against Old Master Mu's neck even tighter. Slut! If you don't drink the supreme profound medicine soup, I will kill Old Master Mu right in front of you. Chapter 1956. Despicable. Shameless. When the commoners heard that, they clenched their fists in anger as they stared fiercely at Yiqing Qian's direction. This woman was truly a first-class poisonous woman. The commoners had witnessed Yiqing Luo's ability earlier. Thinking of those rumors about Yiqing Luo, these commoners who were blaming Yiqing Luo had no choice but to place their hopes on her. Only Yiqing Luo could kill Yiqing Qian. Only Yiqing Luo could save the West Continent. If Yiqing Luo drank the profound medicine soup, wouldn't she be at Yiqing Qian's mercy? Moreover, based on Yiqing Qian's vicious temperament, even if Yiqing Luo really listened to her and drank the profound medicine soup, Yiqing Qian would never let the Mu family off. But if Yiqing Luo didn't drink the profound medicine soup, the Mu family would still have to die. How should Yiqing Luo choose? The commoners placed their hopeful gazes on Yiqing Luo. The atmosphere at this moment became extremely oppressive. Yiqing Qian obviously knew what everyone was thinking. She raised her lips, that face which was covered by messy long hair, still couldn't hide the murderous intent she was giving off. What she wanted was exactly like this. No matter what Yiqing Luo chose, Yiqing Luo would eventually become the sinner of the West Continent. She wanted to destroy the West Continent. Destroy the continent which used to laugh at her. Moreover, she wanted to push the destruction of the West Continent to Yiqing Luo alone. She wanted Yiqing Luo to be condemned by thousands of people. In the historical records, it was a calamity which brought calamity to the country and people. Yiqing Luo, I don't have that much patience to wait for your decision. Old Master Mu's life is in your hands. Yiqing Qian screamed sharply, her eyes filled with complacency. Lass, don't listen to her, I'm already so old, I've lived enough. Don't worry about me, just do it and kill this little slut. Mu Xiao spat. He wasn't afraid of the dark illusory whip on his neck at all. Shut up. Yiqing Qian increased the strength of the magic whip. The magic whip, which was surrounded by black qi, drew a line of blood on Old Master Mu's neck. Immediately, her eyes flashed with madness. Yiqing Luo. Immediately pick up the profound medicine soup and drink it. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and stared at the medicine bottle by her feet as she pushed it with her toes. The medicine bottle rolled on the altar, emitting a clear gurgling sound. The breeze swirled her loose black hair around her shoulders. Her red dress was burning like a raging flame. The peerlessly beautiful and enchanting young lady slowly raised her head. Her charming eyes were flowing with light as she looked at Yiqing Qian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. She curled her lips and chuckled. The laughter was mixed with extreme mockery and disdain. What are you laughing at? Yiqing Qian's heart trembled. An inexplicable fear towards Yiqing Luo welled up in her heart again. Yiqing Luo stared fixedly at Yiqing Qian as she crossed her arms over her chest and gave an incomparably calm smile. Why don't you give it a try? Smart eldest sister, you should be very clear that once you hurt anyone from the Mu family, the consequences would be right? She deliberately raised her eyebrows and dragged out the last word. The threat was obvious. Yiqing Qian was so infuriated that her body tensed up, but the magic whip which was stuck on Mu Zhao's neck was unable to move. He understood. Of course she understood. Once she killed Mu Zhao, what would be the consequences? Now she had the entire Mu family in her hands, so Yiqing Luo didn't dare to act rashly. But if she killed one of them, Yiqing Luo would absolutely strike her without any qualms. Yiqing Luo, that slut, actually thought of such a despicable idea. Chapter 1957. When the commoners heard Yiqing Luo's words, initially they didn't react to what she meant. Later on, looking at Yiqing Qian's expression, they were suddenly enlightened. Momentarily, the commoners were filled with emotions. This 15-year-old young lady who was hailed as a legend indeed lived up to her reputation. Under such circumstances, her brain could still move so quickly. Not only did she ensure the safety of the Mu family, she even threatened Yiqing Qian instead. Even though Yiqing Qian held the lives of the Mu family in her hands. But Yiqing Luo could still be on the same status as her. What kind of boldness did she have to be able to do this to such an extent? If it was them, they would absolutely not have this boldness and the guts to use the lives of the Mu family as a threat instead. If Yiqing Luo knew what the commoners were thinking about, she would definitely touch her chin as she gave an evil smile. Foolish humans, you're still too inexperienced. How could she, Yiqing Luo, possibly just simply threaten someone who dared to threaten her? Yiqing Qian was extremely infuriated, but she indeed didn't dare to act rashly. Her expression was gloomy as she looked at Mu Xiao, who had a fearless expression and was still looking at her with ridicule. Forcefully suppressing the surging anger in her heart, a glint flashed past her eyes. Yiqing Luo, did you really think that I only have the Mu family as a bargaining chip? She clasped Mu Xiao's neck tightly as her long whip danced, pointing towards the surroundings of West Lawn Square, towards those thousands of commoners. These are all my bargaining chips. Yiqing Qian's words had just landed. Not knowing when waves after waves of profound yin qi had surged over from the vicinity of West Lawn Square. Those profound yin qi brought along a sinister cold storm as it wantonly plundered everything around it. In just a short moment, it had covered the entire West Lawn Square tightly. Following that, the entire crowd of commoners were surrounded by a total of 200 dark forces black robes. Yiqing Qian. You despicable woman. Dark forces. These are all people from the dark forces. What are you trying to do? Yiqing Qian, do you want all of us to become the dark forces' food? When the commoners saw those 200 black-robed remnants, their expressions had a huge change. These black-robed remnants had obviously been lying in ambush in the surroundings. He had been waiting for this moment. The commoners actually knew clearly in their hearts that they were forced to stand by the side of the public square by Yiqing Qian was actually for convenience, so that Yiqing Qian could kill them on the spot. But when he saw so many black-robed survivors, the people's hearts couldn't help but tremble in fear. Yiqing Qian allowed those people to accuse and abuse her. In her eyes there was only Yiqing Luo alone. She stared sinisterly at Yiqing Luo, hoping to see a sliver of panic and fear on Yiqing Luo's face. But after staring at Yiqing Luo for some time, she was disappointed. When Yiqing Luo saw the surrounding black-robed remnants, the expression on her face didn't change at all. He seemed to have guessed that such a thing would happen. This really made Yiqing Qian feel as though she had used all her strength to hit a ball of soft cotton. Not only did it not let her vent the anger in her heart. On the contrary, it made her feel even more aggrieved. Yiqing Qian was annoyed, so annoyed that her entire heart was burning. A pair of fox-like beautiful eyes gradually exuded mysterious yin qi. Wisps of mysterious yin qi swirled in her eyes. A strong murderous intent shot out. Chapter 1958. The dark illusory whip was laced with a dense profound yin qi. In the air it gave off a piercing sound. When it landed heavily, the entire altar was embedded several meters deep as black qi curled up, which was extremely horrifying. The commoners instinctively screamed out in fear as they retreated a few steps. But they were pressured by the 200 black-robed remnants behind them till they couldn't even take half a step back. Yiqing Qian gave a cold laugh as she pinched Mu Xiao's shoulder and with a leap, she charged towards the direction of those commoners. She wanted Yiqing Luo to see it with her own eyes. How she wanted her to see with her own eyes, how she killed those commoners. She wanted Yiqing Luo to think about it all the time. Those innocent commoners all died because of her, Yiqing Luo. Heh. Behind her, Yiqing Luo's leisurely laughter was filled with ridicule, as it was filled with endless ridicule. Her slender brows rose slightly as her brows revealed a flirtatious expression, which made her look extremely alluring. This wasn't a 15-year-old young lady's temperament and charm. But when it was on Yiqing Luo it seemed to be natural. Yiqing Qian, do you really think that everything is under your control? The young lady's sweet voice was mixed with a sweet smile. As though it was just a simple conversation. But her words made one feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately after, the young lady giggled. Unfortunately, wherever I'm around, you're destined to lose control. Because you'll forever be my supporting role, forever to be stepped on by me. Her voice paused and her tone suddenly changed, extremely incisive as she said word by word. Don't turn over. Arrogant and presumptuous words. Insolent and unbridled ridicule. Yiqing Qian was even more annoyed hearing that. Her eyes were burning with fury as all her thoughts were placed on those commoners. The dark illusory whip in her hands was like 10,000 poisonous snakes as it madly swept towards the commoners. Ah! Suddenly a miserable shriek was heard. The originally arrogant Xianxia had yet to make a move when her body crashed heavily onto the side of the altar. Following that, she was hit by the side and fell below the altar, right beside those commoners' feet. The commoners retreated frantically as if they had touched the plague, and they screamed in disgust. That poisonous snake, which had yet to fly out, also retracted back because of Xianxia's death. Xianxia fell onto the ground as the dark illusion whip lost the support of the profound energy and was like a dead object as it circled around Xianxia. She abruptly stood up and fearfully stared at Mu Xiao, who was floating in midair and laughing out loud. How could you, just now, just as she was about to attack the commoners? It was Mu Xiao who took advantage of the moment when she was in a fit of rage and anxiously attacked her chest with his palm. This caused her, who had almost gone berserk, to shatter the condensation of her profound qi. The backlash from the profound yin aura caused her internal organs to feel an intense pain. Not just Grandpa but also us. At some point, the 14 people of the Mu family who were tied up in chains stood up. They were supporting each other, and their imposing manner was overbearing as they stared coldly at Xianxia. The profound qi that lingered around each of them was fluctuating. At the very least, they were all profound practitioners who were above the 3rd grade of the Earth Profound Realm. The commoners sighed in their hearts. No wonder they were one of the 4 great profound families, the Mu family. Not only did they have outstanding abilities in terms of alchemy and treatment, even his own profound strength was maintained at a level that could only be high and not low. Looking at the aggressive people of the Mu family, Mu Qiqi was stunned. Chapter 1959. She had obviously witnessed the Mu family being fed the supreme profound medicine soup with her own eyes. She had also tested it personally. The Mu family's profound energy had indeed been sealed. She was waiting for Yiqing Luo to come to the West Square. In front of Yiqing Luo, to cripple the Mu family's meridians, brutally killing them. How could the Mu family's profound energy be restored? This was impossible. Where did the deviation go? Looking at Xianxia's distorted face, extremely pale and filled with disbelief, Shui Fei Shui gave a light snort. With Mu Lai's support, she slowly walked out. Her slender jade-like fingers pinched a medicine bottle. She shook it and sneered, "This is all thanks to Miss Qing Luo for giving me the antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup." Shui Fei Shui's heart was filled with admiration towards Yiqing Luo. This kind of admiration had already surpassed the boundaries of age. No matter if Yiqing Luo was just a 15-year-old young lady. Shui Fei Shui's respect towards Yiqing Luo was from the bottom of her heart. The antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup was secretly given to her by Yiqing Luo when she first appeared and saved her. When Yiqing Luo saved her, the profound medicine soup on her had already been cured. After that, while Yiqing Luo attracted Xianxia's attention, she fed the antidote to the Mu family. While Yiqing Luo was intentionally provoking Xianxia, constantly attracting her attention. They had already taken the opportunity to adjust the profound energy in their bodies. Shui Fei Shui's gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with gentleness. If this lass could become the Mu family's daughter-in-law, how good would that be? Her ability was strong and she had extremely high attainments in medicinal pills. Unfortunately, her 2 brats were not worthy of this lass. Mu Lai saw through his beloved wife's thoughts with one look. He smiled helplessly, holding Shui Fei Shui's hand tightly. Now was not the time to think about these things. After Mu Lai's reminder, Shui Fei Shui finally straightened her expression, raised her brows and looked at Xianxia. Xianxia, as the eldest missy of Three Springs sect, you borrowed the dark forces to destroy Three Springs sect, and even the entire West continent. This is unforgivable. My Mu family absolutely won't let you off easily. Mu Xiao stood in front of the young and old of the Mu family, full of dignity. I, Mu Xiao, have retired from the martial world for many years. But today, in order to restore peace to the West Wave continent, I, Mu Xiao, will do everything in my power to expel your dark forces from the West Wave continent. Although the Mu family is the most low-key among the 4 great families, he had always focused on medicine shops and medical centers. However, when they worked together and released their might, it was enough to intimidate everyone present. The hearts of the people also seemed to be ignited by the Mu family. Yiqing Qian turned pale with fright. She looked at everyone in the Mu family. Their faces were filled with anger, as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Her heart trembled violently. No. Today was her home court. How could she possibly allow Yiqing Luo to retaliate? Yiqing Qian was the real main character. In the West Continent, she could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. Everyone had submitted to her power. She would not fail. She still had the dark forces. She didn't believe that the guards of the West Continent plus the dark forces couldn't defeat a dozen Mu family members. What's more, she still had millions of people as a bargaining chip. Based on the kind temperament of the Mu family, they absolutely wouldn't dare to make a move easily. She still had a backup plan. As long as she could drag on till the Wolf Saint technique rushed over. Yiqing Luo and this group of people who didn't know what's good for them had to die. All of them had to die. With this thought in mind, Yiqing Qian immediately dashed towards the direction of those people. Chapter 1960. Mu family, as long as one of you makes a move, I will kill a commoner. Yiqing Qian's hoarse voice bellowed hysterically. She rushed to the front of the commoners. The long whip rolled and 10 over commoners were sucked into the whip. The commoners' faces revealed a terrified expression as they screamed. Yiqing Qian whipped the long whip fiercely and pulled those 10 over commoners towards her. She turned her head and a maniacal smile surfaced on her malevolent face. You still want to scheme against me? As long as you still have a conscience, you will never be able to defeat me. Mu family's old and young's faces sunk. They clenched their fists tightly as they suppressed the anger that was about to explode. Yiqing Qian had indeed grabbed hold of their weakness. They were concerned about the commoners and there was no way they could disregard the innocent commoners. Especially when they saw those commoners' terrified expressions. This made them even more worried that they would not be able to do anything to Yiqing Qian. Mu Zhao's face flushed red. He had lived for so long and this was the first time he had met such a shameless and vicious woman. Looking at those commoners' pleading eyes, listening to those commoners' terrified cries. Mu Zhao clenched his fists tightly as his veins popped out and every piece of muscle was tensed up. In the end, he couldn't stand the commoners' cries. He turned his gaze towards Yiqing Luo. Miss Qing Luo? Mu family's old and young sighed slightly. They had not expected that as the older generation of the four great families, they had to seek help from a 15-year-old young lady when they met with trouble. Yiqing Luo's lips hung a faintly discernible smile. Her arms crossed her chest as her sweet voice had no trace of nervousness. Old master, don't worry. 5 simple words totally didn't explain what she would do. But for no reason, it made Mu family's old and young heaved a sigh of relief as they felt inexplicably at ease. Yiqing Luo's brows rose frivolously as her eyes were filled with smiles as she stared straight at Yiqing Qian. Yiqing Luo hadn't said a word. Yiqing Qian, who met Yiqing Luo's gaze, was the first to fly into a rage. Yiqing Luo, don't you care about the commoners' lives? Then let's try and see if you kill me first or I kill all these commoners first. Yiqing Luo was still smiling. She didn't move, just using that kind of smiling yet not smiling, examining gaze, quietly and faintly staring at Yiqing Qian. This kind of gaze made Yiqing Qian almost go crazy. But at this moment, among the crowd of commoners, a loud and clear voice suddenly rang. Yiqing Qian. You destroyed our home and now you want to make use of us to threaten Madame Yiqing Luo. Even if we die, we won't let you do whatever you want. We owe the Mu family a great debt of gratitude. Usually they spent all their wealth for us. Today I want the Mu family to sacrifice their lives for us. I can't do it. Yiqing Qian, even an ant can swallow an elephant. Even if you're cultivators, no matter how powerful you are, so what? We have millions of companions. One after another, the rousing cries stirred up everyone's hearts. Following the impassioned speeches of those people, the people seemed to be reminded of the Mu family, how they usually did good deeds and served the people wholeheartedly. Today they wanted the Mu family to once again be controlled by that wicked woman Yiqing Qian? No. They could not stand by and watch as the Mu family was once again controlled by others. Moreover, that person was right. Ants could swallow an elephant. Although their strength was small. But they had the advantage in numbers. Before Yiqing Qian could react, a group of commoners suddenly went crazy as they charged towards her. Yiqing Qian was forcefully pressed onto the ground by 10 over people. Losing the support of profound energy, the illusion whip loosened its grip on those 10 over commoners. Chapter 1961. Ah. You bunch of damned lowly commoners. How dare you hit me? Do you believe that I will make you, bitch? Yi Qingqian's miserable cries rang. Those frenzied commoners didn't give Yi Qingqian any chance to react. Even if Yi Qingluo wanted to release her profound qi to shake off those commoners. The minute her profound qi was released before she could shake off the commoners, there were commoners who accurately pressed on her pulse. Following that, the commoners' bodies and those tyrannical fists landed on her. She had no way to raise her concentration and release her profound qi to resist. Yi Qingqian struggled for a few moments, and under the frenzied violence of the commoners, she could only beg bitterly. However, those commoners' eyes were already red from the beating. They couldn't wait to kill Yi Qingqian directly and have a quick death. How could they possibly let Yi Qingqian off just because she begged for mercy? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to use your status as a cultivator to strut around? Who asked you to capture the Mu family's old and young to threaten Yi Qingluo? Who asked you to still want to kill us? If I don't beat you up till you are covered with injuries, if I don't beat you up till you kneel down and call me daddy, I won't have the face to call myself a commoner. The anger and resentment in the hearts of the common people were instantly appeased. There was no mercy in her attacks. Even with the cultivator's qi protecting her. Under the furious beating of hundreds of commoners, Yi Qingqian could only inhale but not exhale. This scene made the Mu family's old and young dumbstruck. They looked at Yi Qingluo in astonishment. This is also part of your plan? Old Master Mu asked in a daze. Seeing Yi Qingluo nodding. Mu family's old and young expressed that this lady was simply too terrifying. It was as if everything was under her control. Where did she get the confidence from, to think that she could incite those commoners? If the commoners were afraid of death, wouldn't that incite failure? Yi Qingluo's lips curled slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness. Because I believe the Mu family's position in their hearts. As long as they still have a heart, they will remember what you've done for them. She chuckles and looks at Mu Xiao with admiration. It's all thanks to Grandpa Mu for leading the Mu family to be so upright. Mu family's elder Xiao looked at Yi Qingluo's smiling face and remained silent for a long time. This girl was really amazing. Previously he heard the two young lads mentioning about Yi Qingluo non-stop. They became interested in the girl. Now he saw it with his own eyes. Their fondness towards Yi Qingluo increased. His strength was outstanding, he was loyal, and he had a brilliant mind. He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither arrogant nor rash. Such an amazing girl would definitely become a great person in the future. The two brats in their family had never done anything meaningful in their daily lives. Now he had finally done something right. Making friends with a miraculous lady like Yi Qingluo. For the Mu family it was a great fortune. If Mu Zifan and Mu Zifei were present at this moment, they would probably have to wipe away their tears. Were they even related by blood? Below the altar, Yi Qingqian's voice became softer and softer. Yi Qingluo then slowly opened her mouth. Stop, if you continue fighting, someone will really die. Her calm and sweet voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. She was obviously using an ordinary tone and saying ordinary words. Reverberating in the commoners' ears, it easily made those commoners to stop. Their irritable and furious hearts seemed to have calmed down in that clear spring-like voice. Chapter 1962. This is the beloved bedwarming maid of the leader of the dark forces. If you kill her, I'm afraid it will incur the hatred of that leader. Yi Qingluo smiled lightly as she slowly leapt down from the altar. She took leisurely steps and stopped beside Yi Qingqian. When the commoners heard that, they instantly regained their senses. A look of fear and horror appeared on his face. The bedwarming maid of the leader of the dark forces? They really killed Yi Qingqian. Would the dark forces let them off? Luckily, they still retained their rationality, and when they were beating Yi Qingqian up, they didn't hit her vital points. As for the female commoners, their gazes towards Yi Qingqian were filled with disdain. On the contrary, they regretted not kicking her a few more times earlier. A vixen who relied on her seductive looks, they thought that Yi Qingqian was some official in the dark forces. They had not expected that she was just a bedwarming maid. Merely a vixen who used her power to bully others. No matter what the commoners were thinking, they had retreated out of Yi Qingqian's boundary, giving up the space to Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground on her last breath, twitching. Her clothes had long since been pulled, revealing her skin. A head of messy hair full of dirt. There wasn't a single spot on her body which was unscathed. Could be seen how vicious those commoners were. If it was any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't be able to survive after being beaten up by hundreds or even thousands of people. Not knowing what kind of transformation Xianxia had done to her body in the dark forces through the dark arts. Not only was she still alive. The injuries on her body were only superficial wounds. But it didn't harm her life. Yiqing Luo rubbed her chin as she stared at Xianxia calmly. The current Xianxia shouldn't be considered as a person. This kind of iron body she probably had long become an immortal monster. You slut, I want to kill you. Xianxia widened her eyes, which were filled with hatred as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. She opened her mouth and let out a low, intermittent roar. Yiqing Luo looked down at her. Looking at Xianxia's disheveled state but still tenacious life force. She sighed softly, Xianxia, you're really a monster. Xianxia's face instantly turned pale. Even though he was in a sorry state and had all sorts of scars on his face, Yiqing Luo could still see through her pale face. Ah! Yiqing Luo half squatted down, a pill from her fingertip, flicked into Xianxia's mouth. It melted in her mouth and Xianxia had no chance to spit it out. Her entire body convulsed in pain as she struggled. A pair of eyes stared venomously at Yiqing Luo, as though she was questioning Yiqing Luo on what medicine she had fed her. Yiqing Luo clapped her hands as she smiled lightly. It's just a medicinal pill to replenish your energy. Anyway, you're an immortal monster, so just stay alive and let me torture you. Nonsense. I'm not a monster, you are. Xianxia's eyes were flustered, as though she had not expected that Yiqing Luo had seen through all her secrets. Her breathing was hurried as she looked in terror at Yiqing Luo, who was slowly approaching. Suddenly strength came from nowhere. Enduring the intense pain from being beaten up, he got up from the ground. But before she could take a step forward and run a step, suddenly a tearing pain came from the sole of her feet. It was as if something was tearing at her feet. Following that was the intense pain of her bones being smashed. Both her feet knelt heavily on the ground. Xianxia raised her head in terror as she stared at Yiqing Luo. What did you do to me? My body. Chapter 1963. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave an alluring smile. Of course it's to stop you from leaving. Xianxia's eyes were overwhelmed with shock as the intense pain made her body, which was sprawled on the ground, started to twist. Her 5 fingers clenched tightly onto the ground as the hard ground was scratched by her fingers, leaving streaks of marks. Xianxia, do you think that you can still hope for those dark forces remnants to save you? Yiqing Luo looked at her, trying her best to stand up as she couldn't help but laughed out softly. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose as she pointed behind Xianxia. Why don't you take a look? Xianxia's beautiful eyes kept expanding as it was filled with malevolence. I'm not lying to you. That pill which I fed you earlier is to replenish your physical strength. Other than your legs, you still have the strength to turn your head. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Xianxia's face sunk as she moved her body. Indeed, her body, which was weakened by the commoners, regained its strength. Other than the intense pain from her legs, there wasn't any discomfort in the other parts of her body. Xianxia naturally didn't feel that this was Yiqing Luo's kindness, intentionally sparing her life. This was definitely Yiqing Luo, that slut's new way of torturing people. If Yiqing Luo knew what Xianxia was thinking, she would definitely smile and nod her head as she told her, "Young lady, you've guessed correctly." Xianxia laid on the ground as her bent fingers clenched into a fist. After some time, she turned her head back as she looked at the place where the commoners were standing. She was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. Why, when she was being beaten up by those lowly commoners, the 200 Dark Forces men whom she had specially selected actually didn't save her or stop those commoners' actions. When Xianxia turned her head back, she saw, round after round, guards dressed in royal family's armor surrounded the entire West Square. Those 200 Dark Forces men had long been subdued by the royal family's guards and had no way to resist. The crowd slowly opened up a path. They saw a man dressed in a dragon-embroidered robe walking over with steady footsteps, filled with majesty. Dragon-embroidered robe. That was the dragon robe that only the current monarch could wear. Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with astonishment. You? How could you possibly? No, Leng Fengying, how could you? The person in front of her was delicate, handsome, and extremely gentle. He looked like a good young master, a very amiable young master. Wasn't that the current crown prince, Leng Fengying? Hadn't she locked Leng Fengying in the crown prince's chambers? Leng Fengying's tiger talisman as well as the sovereign's jade seal had already fallen into her hands. How was it possible for Leng Fengying to become a monarch? He could even lead troops to counter her? No, impossible. Yi Qingqian staggered as she stood up and pointed at Leng Fengying as she cried out sharply, Leng Fengying, are you thinking of rebelling? Without an imperial edict, how could you become the monarch of the West Continent? She pointed at the imposing royal guards. Do you all want to rebel with that traitor? Do you all want to become traitors? Yi Qingqian was hysterical. Those royal guards did not seem to have heard what she said at all. He stood there like a towering mountain. Presumptuous. How dare you be disrespectful to the new monarch? The third-generation senior statesman rebuked angrily. The new monarch is our West Continent's legitimate new monarch. How can we allow a woman like you to be so presumptuous? Chapter 1964. What do you mean by legitimate? You're talking rubbish. Yi Qingqian gritted her teeth. According to the West Continent's regulations, before the crown prince ascends the throne, he must obtain the army tiger emblem and West Continent jade seal from the late emperor before he can hold the ascension ceremony. After a pause, Yi Qingqian raised her voice. He doesn't have the tiger talisman or the imperial jade seal, nor did he report the enthronement ceremony, so he can't be considered as a civil affairs official. How can you insist that he didn't? Yi Qingluo smiled lightly as she opened her mouth as she slowly walked towards Leng Fengying. Yi Qingqian stuttered. Of course she couldn't say that the tiger tally was with her and the jade seal was with her. Otherwise Yi Qingluo would definitely snatch the tiger talisman and imperial jade seal by force. She absolutely could not hand over the tiger tally and imperial jade seal. Otherwise, if Leng Fengying had a legitimate reason to cooperate with Yi Qingluo, her plan to convince the Wolf Saint Law to start with the West Continent, to rebuild the Dark Forces, and to unify the Nirvana realm once again, was going to be ruined. She absolutely could not fail. He absolutely could not lose the backing of the Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qingqian clenched her teeth as she glanced at Leng Fengying. If he has it, then take it out and let all the commoners in West Continent have a look. Otherwise, who would be convinced by a new emperor? However, Yi Qingqian's words had just landed. A loud and clear voice suddenly erupted from the surroundings, resounding through the entire West Wave Square. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. The commoners were indeed experts at face slapping. Within minutes he had slapped Yi Qingqian's face. Yi Qingqian's face turned steely green as she retreated a few steps. These few steps caused the sharp pain in her legs to attack her again, as if her bones were being torn and crushed. She screamed in pain and fell heavily to the ground. She hugged her legs and screamed in pain. Her screams were instantly drowned out by the enthusiastic shouts of the people. Leng Fengying's popularity in the commoners' hearts had always been extremely high. Even when Leng Fenghua was still around, Leng Fengying was the most beloved prince by the people. After that, Leng Fengying became the crown prince, the future monarch. The commoners all raised their hands in approval. Right now, the Western continent was under the control of an evil woman, and she was willfully slaughtering the innocent, dyeing the Western continent with blood. Even if Leng Fengying didn't officially become the new monarch, they would definitely use their mouths, portraying Leng Fengying as the rightful new ruler. Now that Leng Fengying had come out, he was saving the West Continent from the abyss of suffering. The commoners didn't care if he had the tiger seal or the jade seal. Those superficial things were of no use to the common people. They only knew that once Leng Fengying became the new monarch, their country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. Yi Qingqian was convulsing in pain. He could still hear those commoners' passionate cheers for Leng Fengying. Her heart was bone-chilling. If she had known earlier, she would have killed Leng Fengying. Without the tiger talisman, without the imperial jade seal, Leng Fengying had no real power at all. What right did he have to become the monarch of the Western continent? The third-generation Doyen looked at the woman lying on the ground in agony. He took out something from his bosom and held it up high. The tiger seal is here, royal army, listen up. Those tens of thousands of valiant and high-spirited royal guards exploded into a deep roar in unison. The royal army is here. Today, this general will hand over the royal tiger seal to the new monarch. The new monarch will lead the royal army to kill this evil woman. Protect the western continent. The tiger seal was respectfully presented to Lung Feng-ing. Chapter 1965. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. The army's roars rose and fell, each one more stirring the hearts of the people. So much so that even the commoners' impassioned hearts were ignited. Following that, the royal guards raised their arms and shouted. Xianxia's face turned pale. She looked at that piece of tiger talisman in disbelief, watching Lung Feng-ing receiving the tiger talisman and raising it up high. Listening to the commoners and the royal guards' cries of wanting to get rid of her. Her heart was trembling fiercely. Uncontrollable terror rose from the bottom of her heart. No. Impossible, that tiger talisman of yours is fake. It must be fake. Xianxia shook her head in panic. Her voice was extremely soft, and under the deep and resounding cries, it was hard to hear what she was saying. But Yiqing Luo heard it very clearly. She smiled till her eyes were curved as her eyes were filled with a faint smile. Xianxia, based on your IQ, you still want to control an entire continent? She paused as she looked at Lung Feng-ying's direction. My silly elder sister, there are 2 pieces of tiger talisman. What? Xianxia stared at Lung Feng-ying in shock. No, you're lying to me. He can't become the new monarch. He doesn't have the qualifications to become the new monarch. Yiqing Luo laughed. Why doesn't he have the qualifications? Could it be that you think you have the qualifications? Xianxia, although you've already been chased out of Three Springs sect, but you're after all still a citizen of the West Continent. You're using the dark forces to attempt to control the West Continent, seeking benefits for the dark forces. Isn't this considered as treason? Saying that, she lifted a lock of hair and twined it around her fingertips as she laughed softly. Xianxia, you're the real traitor. When the commoners heard that, their arrogance rose even higher. They clamored that they wanted to kill Xianxia. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes as she smiled at Lung Feng-ying. New monarch, this is after all my elder sister, and as a younger sister, I can't bear to see her die so miserably, so I'll plead on her behalf, hoping that the new monarch will hand this elder sister of mine over to me to deal with and spare her life. How about that? Lung Feng-ying naturally had no objections as he nodded in agreement. Xianxia retreated backwards in fear. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo would be so kind to plead for her. If it fell into Yiqing Luo's hands, she would rather die than live. What do you want to do? Yiqing Luo. Even if I die, I will never. Pa. A loud sound pierced through the air and a long whip fell heavily onto Xianxia's body. Xianxia let out a blood-curdling scream as she was whipped and rolled on the ground several times. Xianxia's body was also left with a deep whip mark. Yiqing Luo. That's mine. Xianxia saw the long whip in Yiqing Luo's hand and was so infuriated that a mouthful of blood spurted out. Yiqing Luo was holding the dark illusion whip in her hand. Xianxia and the dark illusory whip had long signed the contract. Yiqing Luo held the dark illusory whip and actually didn't encounter any resistance from the dark illusory whip. This was impossible. Xianxia tried hard to adjust the profound qi in her body, trying to summon the dark illusion whip. But no matter how she tried to summon it, the dark illusion whip just hung limply in Yiqing Luo's hand, without any reaction at all. More accurately speaking, she didn't detect any presence from the dark illusion whip at all. Could it be that Yiqing Luo had destroyed her dark illusion whip? And completely corroded the dark illusion whip's demonic qi? No. How could Yiqing Luo possibly have such an ability? Chapter 1966. Yiqing Luo seemed to have noticed Xianxia's surprise. She shook the dark magic whip in her hand, like a poisonous snake twisting and circling. She giggled. Don't be surprised, it's not the first time I destroyed your long whip. You. Xianxia's face suddenly turned gloomy. Of course she would not forget how Yiqing Luo humiliated her in the past. Yi Tianquang racked his brains, spent money and resources to find a supreme-grade whip for her. In the end, Yi Qingluo handed it over to Leng Fenghua's hands, allowing Leng Fenghua to destroy her soft whip in front of her. At that time she truly loved Leng Fenghua. The whip was destroyed. She was heartbroken. Now Yi Qingluo had once again destroyed her second long whip. Demonic weapons should not appear in Nirvana realm. Yi Qingluo suddenly moved her wrist. The long whip in her hand turned into a poisonous snake, scuttling in the direction of Yi Qingqian. The poisonous snake was like an afterimage, winding and circling in the air. As if it had a life of its own, it heavily whipped Yi Qingqian's body. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably. There was another bloody whip mark on her body. The whip mark was scarlet, oozing blood. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Qingqian knelt on the ground from the whip. She looked at Yi Qingluo with eyes full of disbelief. Yi Qingluo's whip skills were too strange. When Yi Qingluo lashed out, she didn't even have time to see the trajectory of the long whip. One must know that this dark magic whip was already a dead object. Even she would not be able to execute such a smooth whip technique. How was this possible? Since when did Yi Qingluo have such attainments in whip skills? Yi Qingqian, don't you like to play with the whip? Now I will accompany you to play. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly, her sweet smile seemed to carry the brilliance of the world. But when he met her charming eyes, he could clearly see the murderous intent in Yi Qingluo's eyes. Yi Qingqian obviously saw that murderous intent. Yi Qingqian was terrified. He had clearly thought of thousands of possibilities. However, he had never thought that things would take such a turn. Leng Fengying became the new monarch and led the royal army to subdue the people from the dark forces whom she had been relying on. He had lost the help of the dark forces. In front of Yi Qingluo she was just a dreg. Could it be? Was he really going to die in Yi Qingluo's hands today? No, she didn't want to die. Before Yi Qingluo died, how could she be willing to die? Yi Qingqian's malevolent face was howling as she suddenly pounced towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Her pounce was too sudden. Among the crowd, a few panicky and anxious cries were heard. Qingluo. A few figures walked out from the crowd. Just as Yi Qingqian was about to pounce onto Yi Qingluo, suddenly, a long edge transformed into countless black whip shadows in midair. Immediately following that, it covered the sky and covered the earth as it tightly bound Yi Qingqian into the long whip. Don't worry, how could I let you die? Yi Qingluo sneered as her arms suddenly exerted strength and threw the bound Yi Qingqian heavily onto the ground. Ah! Yi Qingqian let out a blood-curdling scream. Pa pa pa. Pa pa pa. Pa pa. A series of long whip lashing sounds were heard, one after another. The long whip didn't contain any profound qi. It was just that brute force lashing, on the contrary, made one's skin split open, causing unbearable pain. One whip after another, the entire sky above the public square was filled with pa-pa sounds. Chapter 1967. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably. Her body was whipped as she rolled on the ground. Her skin and flesh, which had just been healed by Yi Qingluo's pill, was whipped once again, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Qingqian's miserable cries continued. The surroundings were in silence. No one dared to open their mouths to break the atmosphere. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and admiration as they looked at the young lady who had whipped Yi Qingqian till she rolled on the ground. Could it be that she had fed Yi Qingqian the pill earlier so that she could whip to her heart's content now? Looking at Yi Qingluo whipping one after another ruthlessly. But the expression on her face had not changed at all. A faint smile hung on her lips as her eyes squinted, looking extremely languid. This young lady was really terrifying. Yi Qingluo whipped Yi Qingqian and every whip was full of strength. Even though she didn't release her profound energy, these whips were enough to destroy Yi Qingqian's internal organs and every single one of her tendons. That's right, tendons. Every whip from Yi Qingluo was on Yi Qingqian's tendons and bones. She wanted to shatter Yi Qingqian's bones and break her tendons. No matter how Yi Qingqian's body was transformed into an undying monster. Under this kind of shattering whips, there was no way to reverse the situation. Yi Qingqian had been jumping around for too long. Every time she jumped around it would hurt her brothers. Her reverse scale was her brothers. Yi Qingqian had challenged her bottom line time and time again. Yi Fengyu was almost killed by her. Devil Class's brothers almost died because of her. The brothers in the world group suffered serious injuries time and time again because of her. All of these, if it wasn't to make Yi Qingqian unable to live or die, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? Letting Yi Qingqian die was letting her off too easily. Yi Qingqian's life wasn't as valuable as a strand of her brother's hair. She would not let Yi Qingqian die. She would let Yi Qingqian live in despair, living her days in despair. Pa! A sharp glint flashed past Yi Qingluo's eyes. The long whip in her hand had ruthlessly smashed Yi Qingqian onto the side of the altar. Following that, another round of whip shadows fell from the sky. Time passed second by second. After an unknown period of time, the commoners only felt their legs go numb, and their bodies almost stiffened from maintaining a posture. Yi Qingluo then slowly retracted her long whip. When Yi Qingluo stopped her whipping, the commoners were shocked as they looked at the place where the abuse was taking place. Blood and minced meat were splattered all over the altar. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground. How would she have the strength to stand up? Apart from her face, there was not a single part of her body that was unscathed. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was badly mangled. Blood stained the place where she was lying. The entire scene was as terrifying as it could be. They were as shocked as they could be. It was as disgusting as it could get. Some of the more timid ones directly bent over and began to vomit. This scene was truly too shocking. He had seen beheadings and torture. He would say that he had never seen such a bloody whipping. What was even more terrifying was, under this kind of whipping situation, Yi Qingqian remained conscious from the start till the end. Even though his body was a bloody mess, his bones were broken and his tendons were severed. However, she still had one breath left. Furthermore, her consciousness was extremely clear. Moreover, she had sufficient energy. She could scream miserably, she could curse, she could roar, her voice was sharp and shrill. But she just didn't have the energy to avoid Yi Qingluo's long whip. She remained conscious, suffering the whipping to such an extent. Chapter 1968. Yi Qingluo. Kill me if you have the ability. Just kill me. Yi Qingqian was in so much pain that she wished she was dead as she cried out in pain. She simply couldn't stand such cruel treatment. She could clearly feel the pain of her body being whipped, the feeling of her bones being smashed, the feeling of her meridians being ripped. The pain of being whipped one after another on her body. She could also clearly feel the heart-wrenching, lung-splitting and tearing pain of her flesh being torn apart. She wanted to die. Rather die. She didn't want to suffer such torture. Qingluo, enough. Behind her, those few people who had just walked out from the crowd rushed up to the altar. They stood behind Yi Qingluo, their eyes filled with worry. Earlier Yi Qingluo was totally not like her usual self. That kind of imposing manner. That kind of ruthlessness. Even if it was them, they were slightly flustered. Most of them were worried about Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingqian, who was lying on the ground, conscious, her gaze swept past those few ordinary-looking people dressed in coarse linen clothes, as her eyes suddenly widened viciously. It's you guys. It's you guys. Earlier it was you guys who incited those commoners to make a move against me. If they were ordinary commoners, how would they dare to lead the way? This was Yi Qingluo's scheme. It was Yi Qingluo who had arranged people first, preparing to kill with a borrowed knife at the right time. Seeing that they were exposed, Long Yunzhan and the others slowly tore off the human skin mask on their faces, revealing their original looks. These few people were indeed arranged by Yi Qingluo, to mix in among the commoners. Long Yunzhan Mou Ying Tong Ziqing Trio. But they weren't specially arranged to incite the commoners, to intentionally lead the way. She only wanted them to investigate what kind of trap Yi Qingqian had set, waiting for her to fall into it. But she had not expected Yi Qingqian to be so confident in herself. She thought that with the 200 Dark Forces remnants, and using the Mu family and the commoners as a bargaining chip, she would be able to force Yi Qingluo to give in. Hence, it gave Yi Qingluo a chance to retaliate. In the end, it turned out to be like this. To put it bluntly, it was caused by Yi Qingqian's overconfidence. Long Yunzhan took a look at Yi Qingqian, who had almost turned into a pile of rotten flesh, as his brows creased as he asked calmly, "Qingluo, what do you intend to do with her next?" If Yi Qingluo still wanted to torture Yi Qingqian, then he would be the one to do it. He simply couldn't bear to see that cold and ruthless Qingluo again. Of course. Yi Qingluo smiled sweetly as she looked down at Yi Qingqian, sent her back to Wolf Saint technique. Qian's eyes suddenly lit up as she stared at Yiqing Luo in astonishment and suspicion. You? What tricks are you trying to play again? How could Yiqing Luo possibly send her back to Wolf Saint Technique's side? If she returned to Wolf Saint Law's side, how could he let the Wolf Saint Technique let Yiqing Luo off? This was definitely one of Yiqing Luo's tricks. Yiqing Luo wanted to see her despairing expression and intentionally deceived her. Send them back. Tong Ziqing was also stunned. Wouldn't that be releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Yiqing Luo chuckled, her eyes filled with ridicule. Tiger? Her? He had already turned into a pile of rotten meat, yet he still wanted to turn things around? Of course nothing was absolute. But would she give Qian a chance to turn things around? No. She would only give Qian endless despair. Suddenly, just at this moment, the sound of horse hooves was heard from the commoner's direction. A royal guard flipped down and speedily rushed towards Leng Fengying as he knelt down. Immediately following that, Leng Fengying's steady voice rang. Miss Yi, it's bad. The dark forces have brought along a few other forces and are rushing towards West Lawn Public Square. Chapter 1969. Dark Forces? When the commoners heard the new emperor's words, their expressions changed drastically. They had witnessed the power of the Dark Coalition. Over the past few days, the Dark Forces had shrouded the entire Western continent at an extremely fast speed and had taken control of every major force and family. He heard that the Dark Organization had also brought a few other organizations here. The commoners were all panicking. The courage he had to beat up Qian earlier had now vanished into thin air. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she raised her eyes towards Leng Fengying. Then the corners of her mouth curled up. So what? Since he's here, then he's here. The matter of the West Continent can also be settled once and for all. Leng Fengying's tightly creased brows slowly relaxed. His eyes were resolute as he solemnly gazed at Yiqing Luo. Since Yiqing Luo said so. Which meant that Yiqing Luo already had a foolproof plan. As long as Yiqing Luo hadn't collapsed, the Western continent could still be saved. What he needed to do was to fully believe in Yiqing Luo, to fully assist her. By now, Leng Fengying had already bet the latter half of his life as well as everything in the West continent on Yiqing Luo. He firmly believed that his foresight had never been wrong. Ha! Wolf Saint Technique is here to save me. Yiqing Luo, you're dead meat. You will definitely die. When Jian, who was lying on the ground, heard this news, her face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she looked at the lady by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile and scoffed lightly. Really? It seems that the dark forces really have a way to rebuild another body for you. She had already turned into a pile of rotten flesh, and Qian still wanted to use the Wolf Saint art to save her. It could be seen that the Wolf Saint Technique definitely had a way to solve the problem of her rotten flesh. The dark secret art was already this heaven-defying. Qian stared at Yiqing Luo fiercely. Wolf Saint Law dotes on me so much he will definitely cure me. As for you, you will die in the hands of the Holy Wolf Technique. Moreover, the Wolf Saint Law will definitely let you die in extreme agony for me. Qian's malevolent face radiated an intense murderous intent. Just thinking about the Wolf Saint Technique made him rush over. She could almost see the state of Yiqing Luo's death. The blood in his heart began to boil. Really? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she gave an extremely elegant smile. Just nice. I also want to see with my own eyes how much the Wolf Saint Technique pampers you. As she spoke, she smiled and narrowed her eyes. She then continued in a seemingly unintentional manner. So, I'm here to test the Wolf Saint's love for you. Yiqing Luo's words made Jian's face turn pale. The expression on his face also froze. Recalling the miserable state of being whipped, Qian was overwhelmed with shock. You? What else do you want to do? But a whip flew out horizontally. That long whip landed heavily on Qian's face. A scarlet line of blood appeared on that sinister and twisted but still extremely bewitching face. Qian let out a blood-curdling scream as she didn't even have the strength to cover her face. My face. My face. Pa. Another whip landed on Qian's face. Qian screamed miserably, Don't hit my face. Don't ruin my face. Yiqing Luo, I'm apologizing to you, it's all my fault, don't touch my face. She wanted to struggle and avoid Yiqing Luo's whip. but she couldn't muster up any strength at all. She could only cry and beg Yiqing Luo not to touch this face which she depended on for survival. Even if it was to lower her head to the Yiqing Luo whom she had always hated, she was willing. Chapter 1970. Yiqing Luo stopped. She bent down slightly and glanced at Yiqing Qian, who was begging for mercy. She smiled. Her long and narrow eyes outlined an incomparably beautiful arc. "It seems like you are quite self-aware," she whispered, and her laughter was soothing. Yiqing Qian shook her head with all her might as the wounds on her face started to drip with blood. Her eyes were filled with shock as she cried out, "I beg you, Yiqing Luo, I beg you. Don't touch my face even if you kill me. Don't touch my face." The commoners were all dumbstruck. Even when she was whipped into a pile of minced meat, Yiqing Qian had never given in. But now, because of her looks, she lowered her voice and begged bitterly. This was the so-called to a lady. Her face was more important than her life? For her own face. Even if she had to die? But if she lost her life, what was the use of her face? Yiqing Qian begged over and over again, but it didn't move Yiqing Luo at all. Yiqing Luo swung her long whip, which was like a poisonous snake's whip shadow as it swayed gently. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as a glint flashed past. "But Yiqing Qian, have you ever thought of letting my brothers off when you dealt with them?" Yiqing Qian's begging stopped abruptly. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. "You won't." Yes, Yiqing Qian would not let Yiqing Luo's brothers off. To Yiqing Qian, killing Yiqing Luo's brothers was equivalent to cutting off Yiqing Luo's left and right arms. Yiqing Qian couldn't wait to kill everyone who was related to Yiqing Luo. How could she possibly let Yiqing Luo's brothers off? Similarly, Yiqing Luo would not let her off. Yiqing Qian's face was filled with dead despair. Rumble. Da-da-da. A deafening sound was heard from afar. The dark forces and those who had already collaborated with the dark forces rushed over with the main force. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and looked towards the direction of that black mass attacking from. Suddenly, her lips curled into an indistinct cold smile. "Yiqing Qian, I really can't wait to know if you two are true love." Following Yiqing Luo's sweet laughter, the long whip in her hand covered the sky and covered the earth as it struck towards Yiqing Qian's face, as it struck downwards. "Yiqing Luo. You bitch. I'll kill you, I'll kill you." Yiqing Qian's miserable cries resounded throughout the entire West continent. Wolf Saint Technique, who had rushed over, also heard Yiqing Qian's voice. Wolf Saint Dharma leapt up and quickly walked past the commoners, landing on the altar as he frantically searched for traces of Yiqing Qian. On the altar, sand and dust billowed. He had not yet steadied himself. Suddenly something was thrown towards him. Wolf Xingfa's eyes turned cold and he lifted his leg to kick at the incoming object. With a muffled groan, that thing was kicked to the ground. Wolf Xingfa's face turned green as he focused his gaze. The one he had kicked off the altar just now. It was Yiqing Qian, who had been whipped till her entire body was in a terrible state. Wolf Saint Dharma's heart tightened as he stared at Yiqing Qian's broken body, as his body trembled slightly. He speedily rushed down the altar and knelt beside Yiqing Qian. Did you hear what I said? Respond to me, respond to me." Wolf Saint Dharma's voice was trembling, as though it was filled with boundless affection. Yiqing Qian, who was lying in a pile of minced meat on the ground, trembled slightly. Chapter 1971. Wolf Saint Magic saw Yiqing Qian's body trembling slightly. A trace of ecstasy flashed past his eyes. Alive. Still alive. That's good, as long as she was still alive. Even if this body was crippled, it didn't matter. Just nice, he could also use the dark arts to fulfill his long-cherished wish. The corners of Wolf Saint Magic's mouth couldn't help but rise. Both hands covered Yiqing Qian's head. That was the only place Yiqing Qian could touch. "Wolf Saint Magic, save me, save me." Yiqing Qian tried hard to make her voice sound aggrieved and pitiful. Her head was gently turned towards his direction by the Holy Wolf Technique. Yiqing Qian adjusted the expression on her face. A pair of beautiful eyes, sparkling with tears of grievance. Blinking his eyes, he poured out his endless suffering. But Yiqing Qian thought that her pitiful trick would succeed. But when Wolf Saint Magic's vision touched Yiqing Qian's face, the gentle expression on his face stiffened, his eyes suddenly filled with a violent storm. His 5 fingers suddenly tightened, grabbing Yiqing Qian's long hair. Xianxia felt the pain, drew a cold breath and suddenly tears overflowed. "Wolf Saint Magic, you're hurting me," she said it coquettishly, pitiful. Usually Wolf Saint Magic loved this tone of voice of hers. But this time it made Wolf Saint Magic increase the strength in his hands. He pulled her hair, lifting her up. Xianxia only felt a tingling pain on her scalp, so painful that she almost fainted. In her ears Wolf Saint Magic's vicious and furious growl rang. "How dare you hurt your own face? How dare you ruin your own face?" Wolf Saint Magic. Xianxia's eardrums seemed to be ruptured, her face twisted in pain. This distortion caused her face, which was covered in bloody scars from being whipped by the long whip and could almost be described as a bloody mess, to appear even more terrifying. It also stimulated Wolf Saint Magic's vision. His sinister eyes stared fiercely at Xianxia's face. 5 fingers suddenly clasped her lower jaw. "Xianxia, you obviously know. The Saint Magic most values your face. How dare you hurt this face to this extent?" Xianxia's body stiffened. Her fine black hair that was being hung up and the sharp pain of her scalp being pulled could not compare to the piercing pain of the Wolf Saint Technique's words. The name that the Wolf Saint art called her was no longer who, but Xianxia. He wanted to take back her identity as protector who. Did he want to abandon her? As she had always known. The Holy Wolf Dharma doted on her in every possible way because of her face. Her face was exactly the same as the face of the woman he loved deeply. The woman that Lang Xingfa deeply loved had always been a taboo in the dark forces. Xianxia did not know much. He only knew that the woman used to be one of the holy techniques of the dark forces, called the Fox Holy Technique. As for her, it was because her appearance was exactly the same as the Fox Saint Technique. He caught the attention of the Wolf Saint Technique. He enjoyed the boundless love of the Wolf Saint Technique. Xianxia wasn't worried about becoming a substitute. She knew that the so-called Fox Saint Technique had followed the King of Darkness to death after the King of Darkness had been sealed 10,000 years ago. How could a dead person compete with her? Xianxia had always thought that with her means. It was just a matter of time for the Wolf Saint Technique to fall in love with her. But now Xianxia knew that her cognition was wrong. She didn't have this face, so she didn't have the bargaining chip to attract the Wolf Saint Technique. Without the Wolf Saint Technique, she was only had consciousness, but her body was completely destroyed. How could she survive? Chapter 1972. Wolf Saint Technique. You can heal my face can definitely be healed. Xianxia opened her mouth in trepidation as she stuttered, "I'm wrong, it's my fault. I shouldn't have relied on your adoration and acted recklessly. I shouldn't have discussed with you and found trouble with Yiqing Luo. Wolf Saint Technique, save me. I will definitely serve you well, whatever you want." Xianxia knew. As long as Wolf Saint Technique was willing, Wolf Saint Technique definitely had a way to save her. Her face, her crippled body, could all receive a brand new transformation. Yiqing Luo. Wolf Saint Technique gritted his teeth as he spat out these 3 words. Suddenly he raised his head abruptly. His scarlet-red eyes were like a sharp blade, piercing fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo stood leisurely on the altar, her long and narrow eyes squinted as her slender brows rose, apparently in a good mood. More accurately speaking, she was the one who was enjoying the show. He guessed correctly. What Wolf Saint Technique cared about was indeed Xianxia's face. That time at the Dark Forces, when she saw that Wolf Saint Technique knew that Xianxia once had 2 men, he didn't reveal any jealous expression, so she had her suspicions. If he really loved Xianxia, then how was it possible that when he heard about Leng Fenghua or Leng Fengying, he wasn't moved at all? Today's test was indeed as expected, exactly the same. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule as she squinted at Wolf Saint Technique and laughed softly. So Wolf Saint Technique's love is so shallow. It's just a face ruined and he abused her in this way. I really feel bitterly disappointed for my poor eldest sister. The commoners. Was this called ruining a face? This was basically ruining Xianxia's entire person. They were very curious, how on earth did Yiqing Luo manage to pull off such nonsense in a serious manner? The veins on Wolf Saint Technique's forehead popped out as the sinister scarlet eyes glinted with an even more intense glint. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. My eldest sister's entire life had already been extremely miserable. In order to climb up the throne, she finally managed to sleep with the previous crown prince and worked hard to climb up to the current monarch. Luckily, our new monarch is an upright gentleman and was not moved. This big sister of mine can only linger around and finally met such a good man like Wolf Saint-Fe, but unfortunately, he's such a shallow person. She shook her head and said regretfully, I really feel sad for my poor sister. Poochie. The commoners couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Miss Ye's mouth was indeed a little too poisonous. Although she was speaking up for her elder sister, she still felt that it was unfair. But apparently, it was to tell everyone about Yi Qingqian's glorious achievements. This Yi Qingqian was once the #1 beauty in Three Springs City. As it turned out, she was just a high-class lady with the title of a daughter of a rich family. No, that's not right. Three Springs sect had long severed all relations with Yi Qingqian. Yi Qingqian couldn't even be considered as a high-ranking lady. Wolf Saint Technique's eyes were filled with anger as he clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo and shouted sternly, Yi Qingluo, if you dare to hurt her face, I want your life. Wolf Saint Technique only cared about Yi Qingqian's face. As for that body, how many men had been there before, he didn't care. What he wanted was that face. But Yi Qingluo actually destroyed that face. He had completely destroyed the only obsession he had for thousands of years. He must make Yi Qingluo pay a painful price. Bam! He flipped his palm and slapped Yi Qingqian's body towards Heiji, who was curled up in the corner of the altar. Heiji hurriedly caught Yi Qingqian, who was like mud. Stay here for this Saint Technique. If you let this face get hurt to such a state, this Saint Technique will settle the score with you later. Wolf Saint Technique threw out a sentence. His figure suddenly flashed as he flew towards the altar. Asterisk. Chapter 1973. Wolf Saint Technique landed on the altar, standing face to face with Yi Qingluo. His sinister eyes shot out an intense ruthless light. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles were protruding. Yi Qingluo gave a light smile. Oh? Is Wolf Saint Technique fighting with me for the dark forces or for Yi Qingqian's face? Wolf Saint Technique sneered. I'm not going to argue with you. Today I'm going to avenge the King of Darkness. To avenge the dark forces. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, the dark forces would have controlled half of Nirvana realm by now. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, the King of Darkness's plan would have succeeded. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, they would still be the high and mighty Dark Saint Technique. But now, everything was ruined because of Yi Qingluo. The dark forces were completely exposed in Nirvana realm. Absorbing the young cultivator's soul had also infuriated Nirvana realm. There was no place for them in Nirvana realm. Moreover, Yi Qingluo joined forces with the Imperial Palace to exterminate the dark forces, almost losing 2/3 of the dark forces. Now, the dark forces who escaped with the few pharaohs and Saint Techniques were not more than 1,000 people. All these were thanks to Yi Qingluo. Now, the dark forces' revival could only depend on the West continent to make a comeback. They could only succeed and not fail. Yi Qingluo must die. Wolf Saint Technique's face sunk as he raised his hand high. Everyone, when the dark forces take over the West continent, the conditions that I promised you will be fulfilled. Behind him, a deafening roar was heard, echoing Wolf Saint Technique's words. Yi Qingluo raised her brows as she looked past Wolf Saint Technique towards the crowd. She was very interested in the forces that chose to cooperate with the dark forces at this time. Did those people really believe that the dark forces had the ability to destroy the West continent, or were they stupid? This look was within Yi Qingluo's expectations, but at the same time, it was unexpected. Yi Fengru represented Three Springs sect and brought Three Springs sect's power to stand with the dark forces, which was expected. After all, when Three Springs sect restored Yi Qingqian's identity, it indicated that Three Springs sect would cooperate with the dark forces. And the reason why Yi Qingqian was able to control the entire West continent so quickly, even the 4 great families were unable to resist. It was because of the Three Springs sect's help. The Three Springs sect had to stand on the side of the dark forces no matter what. As for the one standing beside Yi Fengru, it made Yi Qingluo a little surprised. Because, wasn't that person the patriarch of one of the 4 great profounder clans, the Shangguan clan? Ever since the Shangguan clan was expelled from the 4 great profounder clans, then he vanished without a trace. He never heard any news about the Shangguan clan again. He never expected to see the Shangguan clan on the side of the dark forces. It could be seen that after the Shangguan clan was removed from the list, they had no choice but to follow the dark forces. What Yi Qingluo was most concerned about was the person standing behind Yi Fengru and the Shangguan family. Yi Qingluo's intuition told her that that person was the most dangerous. It was a woman of about 40 years of age. He was dressed in a coarse green robe, and his hair was tied neatly behind his head like a man's. She looked like a Daoist nun. There was a long sword on her back, and the sword hilt was emitting a black aura, which was extremely terrifying. This person looked extremely unfamiliar. In Yi Qingluo's memory, she had never seen her before. Chapter 1974. 10 Views. Sect leader of 10 Views? Suddenly someone in the crowd exclaimed. After the exclamations were heard, the crowd all turned their gazes to the heroic woman who looked like a Daoist nun. 10 Views. That was the biggest sect in Nirvana realm. The sect leader of 10 Views was in cahoots with the dark forces? The people couldn't help but feel a piercing chill in their hearts. If the biggest sect in Nirvana realm intervened in this matter, even Yi Qingluo might not be able to get away with it. Yi Qingluo narrowed her brows. When she heard that the person who made her feel a sense of danger was the sect leader of 10 Views, she finally understood where that sense of danger came from. She had heard rumors about the 10 sceneries. About 10 Views she had some understanding. 10 Views, the biggest sect in Nirvana realm. It was located in the most prosperous area of Jade Dome City in East Continent. It could be said that 10 Views' status in East Continent had surpassed the royal family. It could almost be said that they were on equal footing with one of the 4 major sects, Jade Dome sect. One must know that the sect leaders of the other 3 sects were all extremely bold people, completely different from Yi Tianquang, who desperately tried to lower the status of 3 Springs sect to please other forces. In the other 3 continents, when the royal family saw the sect leader, they had to bow respectfully. In this case, 10 Views could still be on equal footing with Jade Dome sect. Could be seen the strength of 10 Views. The sect leader of 10 Views, Jing Yanyan, stood under the altar. And Yi Qingluo stood on the altar. 4 eyes met as if Yi Qingluo was at a high place, overlooking the sect leader of 10 Views. Jing Yanyan's expression sank slightly, suddenly leaped up and flew up from behind Shangguan family patriarch and Yi Fengru, towards the altar. The commoners sucked in a breath of cold air. This sect leader of 10 Views was indeed the sect leader of the biggest sect. This boldness, even the dark forces wolf saint technique couldn't be compared. Jing Yanyan held her head high with the arrogant posture of a sect leader, coldly glanced at Yi Qingluo. Is it you who bullied my disciple and disgraced the reputation of 10 Views? The people gasped again. Right. They had forgotten. Yi Qingqian was the only direct disciple that the head of Shijing sect had personally chosen. Yi Qingqian was once the #1 beauty in 3 Springs City. When she was 10 years old, she was brought back to 10 Scenery by Jing Yanyan and cultivated there for 3 years. The only direct disciple. No wonder Jing Yanyan would join the dark forces camp for Yi Qingqian. Looking at this stance, Jing Yanyan wanted to take revenge for her direct disciple, right? Puchi. A chuckle interrupted the thoughts of the people. Only to see Yi Qingluo covering her mouth as she laughed incomparably delightfully. What sect leader Shijing said is rather laughable. When did I bully your disciple and disgrace your Shijing sect's reputation? Without waiting for Jing Yanyan to speak, Yi Qingluo continued, bully your disciple? If your disciple hadn't tried to kill me time and time again, causing my brothers to almost lose their lives, wouldn't I have been able to retaliate? Or does the sect leader of the 10 Scenery sect think that the 10 Scenery sect is the #1 sect in the Nirvana realm so you can act as you please outside? Harming other people's lives? Pausing for a moment, she continued. And when others retaliate, is it a humiliation to 10 Scenery? Sect leader Shijing's sect rules have really broadened my horizons. When Jing Yanyan heard that, she sneered and said with a proud look, that's right, my Shijing disciples can be like this. My Shijing disciples can do whatever they want outside. If anything happens, this sect leader will bear the responsibility. But if outsiders hurt my Shijing disciples, this sect leader will absolutely not let them off. Chapter 1975. His words were extremely domineering and overbearing. If the disciples of the 10 sites were present, they would probably be so touched that they would sacrifice their lives for her. However, these words in the ears of the common people were a declaration of war. So her disciple was a human. Others were not human. This view was also slightly intoxicated. In that case, sect head Xijing is determined to stand up for Yiqing Qian today? Yiqing Luo's slender brows curved into a smile as she asked with a light smile. Not only for my disciple, but also for the reputation of the 10 sites. Jing Yanyan's eyes were flowing with a sharp light. She finally understood why Yiqing Qian insisted on going against Yiqing Luo. Because this seemingly sweet and harmless girl. In fact, it was too dangerous. If she couldn't be used for herself, then it must be done quickly. Otherwise, the one who would die in the future would be herself. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out loud. She laughed so hard that her stomach felt pain. She covered her abdomen and giggled non-stop. Jing Yanyan's face was like a dying workshop, green and red. Until Jing Yanyan's eyebrows twitched, obviously unable to hold back and was about to explode. Yiqing Luo stopped laughing, her slender fingers stroked her eyelashes and wiped away the tears of laughter. She giggled and said, "The one who tarnished the reputation of the 10 Visions, wasn't it the direct disciple who was personally taught by the 10 Visions sect master, the one whose skills were inferior to others?" The expression on Jing Yanyan's face was completely stiff and livid. Not waiting for Jing Yanyan to explode. In front of her, suddenly, an afterimage like a ray of sunlight flashed past. Jing Yanyan hadn't reacted yet, only heard a crisp paw sound of a slap in her ear. At the same time he felt a burning pain on his cheek. Jing Yanyan's eardrum buzz sound, the sound made her brain hurt like it was being torn apart. The wind blew and the smoke dispersed. Everyone clearly saw Jing Yanyan on the altar, the obvious red and swollen handprint on her face. The audience was silent. The 10-site sect master was slapped in the face. And the person who slapped her. She stood there leisurely as if nothing had happened, as if everything had nothing to do with her. Jing Yanyan only came back to her senses after a long while. The stinging pain on her cheeks caused her expression to gradually turn ferocious. The arrogance and dignity of the sect leader suddenly collapsed. Her gaze seemed to be burning with raging fury as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. "You, how dare you? Yiqing Luo, this sect master is absolutely irreconcilable with you." Yiqing Luo smilingly pulled out a handkerchief and slowly wiped her hands. "Patriarch Xijing, I'm just using my actions to show that I'm actually quite similar to Xijing's sect." Her hand that was wiping her hands suddenly paused. She raised her eyes with a smile and gazed at Jing Yanyan with a light smile. In her charming eyes, a cold light flowed wantonly, like an ice-cold poisonous snake, locking onto Jing Yanyan. Jing Yanyan's heart skipped a beat. She anxiously retreated a few steps and suddenly creased her brows, staring fiercely at Yiqing Luo. But the current Yiqing Luo had already changed her expression. "Speaking of which, I'm also very overbearing. It's always me who bullies others. If others retaliate, I absolutely won't be polite." Yiqing Luo smiled incomparably enchanting, her charming eyes curved. The arc was narrow and charming. Chapter 1976. The crowd stared at the altar with sparkling eyes at the spirited young lady. Oh my. This was too cool, wasn't it? He was so handsome that their hearts couldn't stop thumping violently. Jing Yanyan's eyes were gloomy. The anger in her heart had reached its peak at this moment. She opened her arms wide and the long sword on her back was unsheathed from the sheath. That sword was shrouded in a layer of extremely thick black qi. Obviously, it had been processed by the dark forces. The long sword was extremely long, like thin ice, shining with a biting cold chill. The long sword circled a few rounds in midair. The black qi was like a poisonous snake, chasing after the long sword. That is 10 Scenery's sect's treasure, Scenic Light Sword. Scenic Light Sword. It's actually Scenic Light Sword. Sect head Jing is trying to kill Yiqing Luo, trying to take her life. Too despicable. Yiqing Luo is just a 15-year-old young lady. 10 Scenery sect's head is stronger than Yiqing Luo, and even took out the sect's treasure. What number 1 sect? Pfft. When the crowd saw that long sword, they started to ridicule. Some of them saw that black qi and the contempt in their eyes grew even deeper. The most despicable thing is, 10 Scenery sect's head actually borrowed the power of the profound yin qi. How unconfident is she in herself, to actually come up with such a despicable idea. The so-called number 1 sect really makes me laugh my teeth off. Too disgusting. 10 Scenery sect, get out of the Nirvana realm. 10 Scenery Sect, get out of the Nirvana realm. A slogan was shouted. At that moment the commoners started to echo his sentiments. One after another, the deafening slogan resounded throughout the West Lawn public square. On the altar, Jing Yanyan pointed at the scenic light sword. Her eyes were filled with a sinister chill. She snorted coldly, "Yiqing Luo, today I will do justice on behalf of heaven, and take care of this calamitous demoness." Just as her voice fell, she had already leapt up, the scenic light sword in her hand, released a strong sword ray. Profound chi broke out of her body, and the sky was filled with endless sword rays. The earth shook, and between heaven and earth, thunder roared. When this valiant heaven-shaking power was revealed, the people who were shouting stopped one after another. Their eyes were filled with shock as they came into close contact with this powerful, profound energy. They were just a bunch of ordinary people. They couldn't withstand such pressure at all. The commoners clutched their hearts and fell to the ground weakly. As for Jing Yanyan's sword aura, it was still growing. The people in the surroundings were affected more and more. At this moment, suddenly, a thin layer of profound energy enveloped the altar. The celestial chi gradually formed a barrier that enveloped the entire altar. It also forcibly separated the sword chi released by Jing Yanyan from the commoners. Without the erosion of the profound energy, the citizens could finally breathe in fresh air again, and the squeezing of their internal organs also gradually eased up. It's the Mu family. The people's eyes were sharp, and they saw a few people sitting cross-legged at the edge of the altar, maintaining the barrier. It was none other than the Mu family. Those with higher profound ranks were all sitting beside the altar, exhausting their profound energy to fight for the greatest protection for the people. The people didn't even have time to praise the actions of the Mu family. Suddenly they heard Wolf Saint Technique's icy cold voice rang. "Do it. Annihilate this bunch of traitors in the West Lawn continent. Ruling over the West Lawn continent is our first step." The next moment, the remaining evil people dressed in black robes surged in from all directions. As well as various forces, troops surrounded them.